exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it.
Hey folks, good evening and welcome to Phantoms Monster Personal Reports, where I narrate and discuss some of the cryptid and unexplained sightings and encounters submitted to Phantoms Monsters and the Phantoms Monster Fortean Research team. So thanks for joining me. Phantoms Monsters Radio is made possible by you clicking the subscribe button and by you sharing the programming. So if you feel inclined to, the super chat and super thanks donations are always appreciated just by clicking the dollar icon located underneath the chat box. I also have the Buy Me a Coffee link there as well. Now, if you're in the chat and you have a question this evening, please use all caps. And I'll try to get to each and every one. I'll let you know when I read the last report so you can start putting your questions up. So before I get started, you all knew I was in the Chicagoland area over a week ago. I was there for about 5 days, 4 or 5 days, and we were in Rockford, Illinois, and in Chicago as well. And the interesting thing was, before I left, I had several people telling me that I'm going to experience something. I mean, people who are gifted and who I trust. Bernadette, who's in the chat, was one. Brett Butler was another. And I had another friend who's a medium say the same thing to me, which was interesting. So, I kind of went into this whole adventure not really expecting anything to happen, but there were two unusual incidents while I was there. So I'm going to discuss both of them, and you take it any way you want. So the first one happened in Rockford, Illinois. Now, we were up there filming, and I was in the hotel room, a beautiful hotel. I mean, it was like, I had several rooms in the hotel, several rooms in the hotel room. And it was huge, really nice. But anyway, we have had in the past people who were staying in Chicago or around Chicago who were staying in hotels and had encounters with what they thought may have been something that was related to the winged humanoids. And a lot of the folks who had these encounters mentioned that they had flashbacks or, they had dreams about having encounters with these beings after they had something happen in their rooms. Well, anyway, my first night there, I was in the living room and I was watching TV, and I had the air on and it was pretty loud in there, but I could hear some scratching and tapping sounds coming out of the bedroom. So I thought, well, maybe it's just upstairs. But this hotel was really well soundproof. It was an reconverted factory. So it was really, soundproof, to be honest with you. So it kept happening, kept hearing this scratching and this tapping sound. So I got up and walked into the bedroom. And as I walked in there, the huge window was on the far side, and I heard the scratching and the tapping, and then it stopped. Well, I walked over there. I pulled back the curtains, and there was nothing there. I kind of looked around a bit and best I could. I had seen, that was at nighttime. I guess it was around about 11 o'clock or so. Anyway, so I'm sitting in the bedroom. I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and get ready to go to bed. So, because I had a long day the next day. So, I'm laying there, and then I start hearing this tapping and scratching again, but it's coming from the living room. So it kept going and going. It didn't stop. I said, well, I'm going to get up and check. So I got up and walked into the living room, and I walked through the door, and I did hear it coming from the window. And then it stopped. Well, I looked out the window, and I didn't see anything. So, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I believe there was something. Was it related to the winged humanoids? I have no idea, but it was interesting. So that's the only thing that happened at Rockford. The day we left there and went through Chicago, we were going down Route 90, Interstate 90, south, going through downtown. And I was in the back seat. We were in an SUV. They had hired a driver, so I had a driver to there and back. And he and I had been talking about all the phenomena in Chicago and stuff. He was really interested in it. And when we got to West Addison Street, which ran over across the highway, and look, we've had a lot of sightings where people have seen these things fly out from underneath overpasses and quickly disappear. And I'm sitting there looking on my tablet, and the driver, whose name was Brad, he yelled out, "What's that?" And we were right under the underpass. And I looked out real quick, and I saw this huge wing, just the one wing, but it was huge. I couldn't tell if it had feathers or was membrane or anything, but it was dark in color, but it was large. And it flew out from underneath and got to the edge of the overpass and flew straight up into the air, up into the sky. And that's the last I saw of it. So I'm thinking, okay, now, I don't know what I saw, but I took note of it. I talked to a couple people about it. I actually talked to a witness about it who had a sighting there in the same area about 2 or 3 years ago, but it was in the same Irving Park area. So, I don't know if I had actual encounters or not. They were interesting, but it added to the trip, but I did enjoy myself. It was very interesting. So, I just wanted to mention all of that. So, take it as you want. Now tonight, after the reports of all these winged humanoids, referred to many by the witnesses as the O'Hare Mothman or Batman, continue at the airport. And, cargo workers, air traffic controllers, and other airport personnel were well aware of the phenomena. And they openly discussed this among themselves. The O'Hare management and the airlines started to crack down on reports reaching the public by actually threatening suspension and termination. In fact, they were telling these people, do not contact these guys at Phantoms Monster, because we were getting the reports, we were putting them out there, and they were trying to stop. But fortunately, we had a few brave people that did come forward and talk about it. So I'm going to go over a few of those tonight. And like I said, if you have a question, wait till I get to my last account, and you can go ahead and put it up in the chat in all caps, and I'll try to get to it. So this first one I'm going to talk about was where an O'Hare International Airport air traffic controller recalled his encounter with a tall, red-eyed winged humanoid while on the job on July 2020. Now, this was sent into Emmanuel Navarrete, and this is what this air traffic controller posted. He said, "I have worked at O'Hare International Airport for the last 7 years as a member of the air traffic control team. In my time, I have overseen the flight operations in and out of the airport hundreds of times. In my time, I have seen many strange things around the airport, but none have been as spectacular as the sighting I had back in July of 2020. So I was working the late evening at TradeCon and had just walked away for one of our mandatory breaks. Now, these breaks help us rejuvenate and also help break up the monotony of what can be as otherwise a tedious routine and help prevent us from falling asleep. Now, during these breaks, I usually go out for a walk to help clear my head, change the scenery. I was walking toward one of the terminal buildings when I noticed some movement out of the corner of my eye, and for some unknown reason, I stopped and turned in the direction of the movement and noticed a large black shape coming to a rest on the ground near a light pole. This thing was at least 6 to 7 foot tall and jet black. It looked like a very big bat, but was also very human-like in appearance. I noticed that it sported a very large and impressive set of black membranous wings that also looked like the wings of a bat. Now, they were open to their full length and must have been at least 12 foot from tip to tip. Now, the arms on this thing were very long and very skinny and ended in long, bony fingers tipped with what appeared to be long talons. Now, the legs on this being were comparable with the arms, long and skinny, but I was unable to really look at the feet to see if they were also shaped similarly to the hands. Now, I stood there and saw this thing for about 30 seconds as it seemingly looked around the ground. In the time I was looking, no fewer than 2 others had come down, employees had come down the walkway and also saw it. If I had looked up, I would have clearly seen us all staring in bewilderment at it. It kept its head down, looking at the ground until an approaching service vehicle seemingly startled it, and it looked up. That is when I saw its head was short and squat, but had a pair of piercing red eyes. It looked in the direction of the approaching vehicle and then began to flap its wings. It took into the air. It disappeared above the building in the span of 1 to 2 seconds and was gone out of sight. Now, I have heard many stories of the supposed O'Hare Mothman from pilots and from other controllers and employees around the airport. I have heard tales of people seeing it in flight or perched somewhere, or in how it had glowing red eyes and looked like a giant man bat. And many of my fellow controllers have told of either seeing it themselves or hearing from others who had seen it and had been the subject of radio chatter on multiple occasions. I never gave much credence to these stories, and even though part of me believed and hoped it was real, seeing it myself only helped me become a true believer. I personally know of 3 other controllers who had sightings of this thing, and just as many pilots who have either reported sightings in and around the airport. You can say it's kind of built up into an almost legendary urban tale sort of status amongst those who work at O'Hare. Now, I know that what I saw was real and want to get my story out there for others to hear. And I want them to know that this thing really is out there somewhere and that trained professionals like myself have seen it and know that it does exist. I hope you find my report useful, and if you wish to contact me, I would be willing to answer questions regarding this encounter. So Emmanuel did get in contact with him and did talk to him. And, you know, I think this was a very good report, very detailed. Even though he had heard about the being in other sightings, he did mention some things that a lot of people didn't mention, in particular the small head with the large eyes. That's one caveat that we really haven't heard a lot of from people, but some have said it, and so that they do make note of that when they do notice that. So again, we had we had the O'Hare Mothman, UFOs, and alien being experiences continually reported by airport personnel. And this next one was actually taken by Manuel. He talked to the individual. He states, "My name is," and it's redacted, "I am 34 years old and live in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. I work at O'Hare International Airport for," and he told the airline, which was redacted, "where I'm a member of the ground crew." And we've heard a lot of stuff from these ground crews. I've talked to a supervisor who's a confident informant for me, who has told me that the ground crew that work for them have told them many times of sightings. I've worked there for the last 8 years and have seen a lot of strange things in my time there. I have also heard from others of strange things that are seen and heard at O'Hare at all hours of the day and night. Now, anyone who has worked in and around the cargo facility for more than a few months has seen the strange lights in the sky and have seen anything from ghosts to strange creatures of all manner at least once. The entire airport itself is spooky, with many strange tunnels that are sealed off and forbidden to even go near. And they actually see some military vehicles that come and go in all hours of the day and night. And of course, he talks about the graveyard on the airport grounds, which is an area where we've had a lot of sightings. Now, I have seen my fair share of things. I've seen a lot of UFOs in the air above the airport, strange creatures that seem to hang around the airport, including the one they call the Mothman. These sightings mostly occur during the evening and night. I work second shift, so I get out later in the evening and have seen many of these strange lights after 10 or 11 p.m. Now, there is one object dubbed the diamond craft. It's a large diamond-shaped light that frequently appears in the sky around the perimeter of the airport on some nights. And I've heard about this UFO as well. It's pretty well known to many of the ground crew that work throughout the airport and can sometimes be seen 2-3 nights in a row. It frequently appears in the same general area and hangs around for about 5 to 10 minutes before disappearing. Now, one night, about the 4th of July, 2020, I was outside overseeing the unloading of a plane when myself and a group of 4 other people all saw what looked like a large person with wings fly over us. It's about 20 foot above us and flew right over us with very little sound. It looked basically, as I said, like a large man 6 foot tall with very large bat-like wings. It was solid black, so much so that it stood out against the sky and lights of the airport. It was over in a matter of a few seconds, and people joked they had just seen the Mothman, and the conversation quickly turned to the many sightings that people have had in and around the airport of something similar. Now, I've had multiple encounters of UFOs and their occupants that have been ongoing for the last 2 years. This is something else we have heard from people. Small humanoid beings, aliens, I don't know what they were. People have had encounters. I have seen what I can only describe as aliens on at least 8 occasions, both at work and at home. It all started back in 2018. It was around May. And I looked up into the sky as I was moving from one building to the next and saw a large circular object that was giving off a green glow. It hovered silently about 100 foot from the ground. And as I looked up at it, I got the strange sensation that the object was something in it was looking back at me. I picked up the pace and tried to get to the building, but the closer I got to the door, an overwhelming urge came over me to stop and look up at the object. It finally got too much to bear, and I stopped about 20 foot from the door, looked up just in time to see the object slowly drift away and higher into the sky. Now, it continued its upward trend for about 10 seconds before it simply disappeared from sight. So, anyway, he goes into details about these UFO sightings, which really aren't related, I don't believe, to these sightings of the winged humanoids. Again, Manuel talked to this gentleman, and he kind of gave him a rundown. Since Since Manuel's into UFO phenomena, a lot of it was, he wanted to use for his blog. So, but it was interesting because we have had UFO sightings. So the next sighting was of a Chicago O'Hare Airport shuttle bus driver who observed a large flying owl humanoid just overhead while standing outside of the parking terminal. Now, he wrote, "My name is, it's redacted. I work as a shuttle bus driver at O'Hare Airport. I was working on April 21st, 2021, near the new parking terminal near Zemke Road at about 6 p.m. I was staged and had wandered away from my bus to take a smoke break when I saw a large owl fly over the top of the building and disappear behind the parking garage. It must have been at least 30 or 40 foot off the ground when I saw it fly over. It made no sound and looked like a giant black thing with very large wings. I saw it for all 2 or 3 seconds as it flew overhead and over the building and out of sight. I didn't see it again, and I saw nothing else when I drove around to the other side after starting my route again. I know the stories of the Mothman have been seen around O'Hare, and that is why when I saw your reports, I decided to write to you about what I saw." Now, the next encounter was a Chicago Department of Aviation employee. Now, they do have they have a lot of different aviation buildings at O'Hare. There's a lot of different, of course, there's post offices and, fire departments and a lot. It's a huge facility. But anyway, a Chicago Department of Aviation employee had an encounter with a black, red-eyed, 7 to 8 foot tall winged being outside of her place of employment as she left work. Now, she stated, "I wanted to relate a possible sighting of the Chicago Mothman that I had on April 15, 2021 at approximately 9 p.m. at Chicago O'Hare. I initially was not going to report this, and I had kept it to myself for fear of someone thinking I lost my mind or was seeing things. That changed when I read the sighting that was posted on Facebook about the gentleman who had the Mothman sighting not even 2 blocks from where I work. The sighting prompted me to look at your website and eventually send this to you. Now I work for the Chicago Department of Aviation at the office located on the airport grounds. I've worked there for about 9 years, and I previously worked at the airport in another capacity 5 years prior. I know the airport like I know the palm of my hand, and I have heard the stories that people tell about all the strange going-ons that happen with surprising frequency. Now, my sighting happened after I stayed late to catch up on work, and it left about 9 p.m. Now, as I walked out the building into the parking lot, I heard what I can only describe as wings fluttering, kind of like you hear when a bird is going to take off or land. I dismissed it as just geese at the airport, because we literally have hundreds of them hanging around at some point. What followed was a loud screech. Nothing like a goose's honk, but very, very loud, ear-splitting screech. That what you hear when a train implies its brakes, but it was different as it went from a higher octave to a lower one and then high again. I know it's not a train, it has a train tractor on the other side of the airport about 4 miles away. I continued walking toward my car when I heard the screech again, and it sounded like it was coming from behind me. I turned and looked towards the trees over by the road and saw what looked like 2 red eyes looking right at me. I stood there looking at those eyes for what seemed an eternity. I couldn't move, and it felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs, almost like I was having an asthma attack. I saw this thing emerge from around the trees. It was illuminated from behind by the warehouse that were across the road, and it must have been 7 to 8 foot tall and was black. About this time, a large truck was coming down the road, and it shot into the air and was gone in a matter of a second. I stood there for a few seconds, still too afraid to move, when I finally came to my senses and practically sprinted to my car. I could not get in my car fast enough, and as I closed the door, I heard the screech again. I turned on my car and left as quickly as I could. Now, I'm not one for over-exaggeration, but I feel almost as if I was being stalked. I felt sick to my stomach for 2 to 3 days after that encounter, and it took like as long for the feeling for the paranormal to finally go away. It was the feeling of utter and complete hopelessness that disturbed me the most, and it helped contribute to my hesitancy of telling someone. I didn't even tell my boyfriend of this until after I decided to send this to you. So I did have an email conversation with this lady, and yeah, I believe everything she said, and I know Manuel talked to her as well. So and this is something very similar to what we've had. People have that foreboding feeling. And of course, you're shocked when you see something like that. So you don't really know how you're going to react to it. And of course, we've had people who have been incapacitated for a couple of days and just couldn't get back in the swing of things. So these things affect people in different ways. Now, this next one was submitted. 3 United Cargo employees were leaving work at night when they witnessed several TSA security personnel approach a red-eyed winged humanoid nearby. Now, this was first sent to Manuel, and I also talked to one of these gentlemen as well. I was walking to my car with 2 of my friends after getting off of work. We were talking about the day and how it felt good to get off and head home. Now, as we approached the car, I saw something moving across the street, but on the other side of the fence. It was dark, but you could easily see it as the entire area was lit up. And there was a plane that had been brought up near the fence for unloading and loading, and there were a lot of activity around the plane. Now, as we walked, I pointed out to my friends, and they also saw the same thing. Now, about this time, a white SUV came driving up with its emergency flashing lights on and came to a halt on the road on the other side of the fence. 2 men jumped out and shone some flashlights on this person, prompting the person to turn around and stare at them. It looked to be about 6 to 7 feet tall and was very dark shade of gray, almost black, and how it looked like 2 large glowing red eyes, but that could have been from the flashlights being shined in this direction. About 10 seconds after the first vehicle arrived, another came up on the other same side of the fence as this person, the illuminated the person with its headlights. I remember hearing my friends say, "Lord have mercy," as we watched the scene unfold in front of us. It was about this time that the person opened up what looked like a pair of giant bat wings and flew up into the air. And as it flew up and over the people that were now gathered around, it let out a loud screech that sounded like train brakes. We hear this train brake comparison a lot. It flew around in a large circle twice, screeched, and then flew out over the fence and toward the runway, and the turn was in the distance. Now, as we watched, it was when a white pickup truck with a TSA emblem came up towards us with its emergency lights on and told us and the others who had gathered in the parking lot to clear out and get in our cars and leave the area immediately. We did as we were told, and as we drove out of the parking lot, we saw another 3 marked vehicles and just as many unmarked vehicles pulling into the street and parking lot, all with their lights on. I took my friends home and we talked extensively about it. One of my friends who worked the later shift at United told me that the airport security and TSA were in the area and asking people who stepped outside to please go back in for their safety, and were out there for at least an hour to an hour and a half. I did some research, came across a podcast where you had been the guest and got your information. So, yeah, this was pretty well a lot of what we've been getting. Another one. 2 additional eyewitness accounts from that same sighting were in the cargo area at the Rest Haven Cemetery, and that it came to light not long after we talked to those 3 other witnesses. Now, I received the following email on August 9th, 2021. A correspondent with the witness who was seriously fearful of losing his job because he came forward. I will only refer to the witness as EW. I saw your article about the flying creature at O'Hare and wanted to reach out to tell you what I saw on that night. I am reaching out to tell you this story, but I do not want any of my information to be given out to the public because I will not risk losing my job over this. We have been told by our supervisors never report anything that we saw to anyone outside of the company, so I'm taking a chance reporting to you. Now, we were unloading a cargo plane that had just arrived from the Miami hub when a couple of people noticed this large person that was standing over by the fence about 40 foot from the plane. It was tall, about 7 foot, and was completely black, but had these solid red glowing eyes. We radioed it in since we figured it was some idiot that might have scaled the fence and was wandering around the tarmac. Now, we were told to report anything suspicious we see to our supervisors, who then call in security and take that person away. Now, security people came within 3 minutes of our call, and I'll shine some lights on it when I saw that it was black and had a large pair of wings. It then took off into the air and started making a loud sound before flying off. After it flew off, a bunch of other people showed up, including many of our supervisors. We all heard about these things that are around the airport, including the Mothman, but I never believed until I saw it with my own eyes. I talked about it with some of my friends, and they saw the same thing, but we're not going to say anything because we were told at our meeting that we were not to report anything we saw to anybody but our supervisors. We were told to do not report this to the news or anyone who asked about what was seen at the airport. And that's when they mentioned us. I'm submitting this to you, but I want to remain anonymous because I've had this job since I left the Navy, and I don't want to lose my job or my benefits. I have been here for over 6 years and have a family to support. Cannot risk losing my job over something like this. I know it sounds incredible, but I can promise you that I'm not telling you any lies and that everything I've told you did happen. I know there are at least 8 of us working that day on the plane, not counting any supervisors or tug operators working around the area. I am doing what I can to prevent my name from being posted or someone from the company finding out that I reported this, and I'm willing to talk only by email, and that's it. No, I will not risk losing my job over this report. So not long after that, there was another report. There was a report filed with MUFON, which was 19 days later, but I believe that individual was part of that same air cargo crew. So, yeah, and I'm not going to read it. It was pretty similar to what I mentioned, other than he was calling this thing a demon or a devil. And we've heard that a lot as well. So anyway, here's the last post. So if you have questions, you can start putting them in the chat. Another July 22nd, 2021 witness who was leaving work at 10:30 p.m. observed several security personnel in the vicinity of the winged humanoid that had just flown over the fence. So now this is 4 different sightings we have received from this one incident. And they state, I was coming up the road towards the exit after leaving work. Now, as I approached the curve by United Cargo, I noticed about 8 security vehicles that had gathered around. As I approached, I saw something fly over the fence and head toward the runway. It looked like a giant man with large wings, but I only saw it for a second or two before it was gone. I actually got on my car and tried to take a picture before it flew out of the range of my camera. But within a second or two of me getting out of my car, I had someone yelling at me to get back in my car and get the heck out of there. I did as I was told and left. As I was driving, more security vehicles were showing up. Now, I decided to report this when I saw that other people were coming forward about what happened that night. So, you know, that's pretty well what's going on. Now, I will say that someone from that same group had taken a video. And apparently there were 3 beings in another area not far from there. He had a video. And he said that when he was confronted by TSA and United personnel, United security, they literally took his phone and put it into reset, factory reset. They weren't taking a chance. And we've heard this before. So, you know, this is very similar to what we've been getting. And look, I'm probably going to do another video with some of the other sightings that we've had around the airport. And a lot of that'll come out as well. So, so that was the last one for tonight. So, if you have any questions, just go ahead and talk about it. Let me bring the comments up. Give me some time to scroll back, see if I don't miss anything. You guys have to excuse me. My sinuses have been crazy today. This wet weather has really affected me. Got a lot of people in here tonight. Brian McLean, has anyone FOIA'd the security agencies? Yes, we have. I have FOIA'd TSA. I have FOIA'd the airport. I have FOIA'd some of the carriers, as well as the Great Lakes FAA. And we always get a response that, well, there's no report of it. So there's a cover up. I mean, you know, they're just not saying anything. And, you know, I get that. So Bernadette asked, do you think one day that the airport will have to admit something is going on? Well, I don't think they're going to admit it unless they absolutely have to. Just like anything else, just like the government, you know, they're not going to talk about alien beings. Sure, they're going to put something out about UFOs once in a while just to satisfy people. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if, you know, they're going to say anything or not. I think if this does continue to the degree, if not more than what it has over the past 7 years, and if we continue to look into this and keep following up on it, and Peace, thank you for your super sticker. Very much appreciated. I don't know. I don't know if they're ever going to come forward with this. We just have to wait and see. Marla Snyder, one account mentioned that seeing the creature took his breath away. Have you heard this in other accounts? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people react in all types of different ways. People have literally fainted. At least 3 accounts that I know of. They have lost control of their legs. So physical effects, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of physical effects. Hi, Lon, Karen here. Karen who? You have to, my brain isn't exactly full kilter tonight, so you have to excuse me for not recognizing. A short order cook. Sorry if this has already been mentioned, but have there been any bad plane accidents that have been unexplained there? You know, the major plane accident they had was, what year was it? I forget even the flight number, but there was one really bad one years ago. And the plane actually took off and just did a nosedive and crashed and killed everybody. That was over 20, 25 years ago, if not more. In fact, I was reading about it and I forgot the actual encounter. You know, it's something we were talking about this when we were up in Rockford about that plane crash, about that area where the plane did go down. For years, it was basically left like Flight 191. Thank you, Brian. That was left. The area that the crash occurred was kind of left vacant. Now, from what I understand, they're starting to build there, and the airport is expanding all the time, and apparently they're building there now, which I think is a shame. I don't think I think it ought to be a memorial area, just like a lot of other places do, a lot of airports. So I don't know. Uh, there's been a lot of unexplained stuff around the hair. You heard me talking about people mentioning ghosts and alien beings and UFOs. It's just par for the course at O'Hare. People just don't really understand how big that place is until they get there. I had been there a few times many, many moons ago, but the other, last week, the week after we drove by it, and it's just huge, and it's getting bigger and bigger all the time. So, and this is one thing I do want to mention. When we went there, when we drove up there, we went around on the traffic was terrible on that Saturday, so we went up Route 94 up to Rockford. So, but we're actually going by a lot of areas where we've had reports. It was funny. I mean, I'm telling Brad, the driver, he said, well, I had a report there, and it was really interesting. And I got to see firsthand a lot of the areas and a lot of the locations where people had described this, and the same on the way back. So, but it was quite interesting. Mike Rastatter, Karen Rastatter. Here, I've been following you on this story for a long time. Did you go to Chicago lately? Yeah, I did. About a week and a half ago, we were there. We were there filming a documentary, and I got to see a lot of places. Tobias was there as well. First time Tobias and I met, all the years we've been working together, it was the first time we got to meet. So that was interesting. And, it was a great trip. I actually got to stop at Notre Dame on the way back, which is someplace I've always wanted to go. So the guy who drove me was actually from around Notre Dame, around South Bend. And though he's living in Maryland now. So he kind of gave me a tour. So I enjoyed that immensely. Marla Snyder, O'Hare is his own city, and I'm connecting flight. Oh, yeah, I know. I hear about people and they're connecting flights there all the time. My wife had to fly into O'Hare at 2 points and had connecting flights. And she kept telling me how she had to practically run across the airport to all the terminals to get to another flight. It's humongous. I mean, and I haven't flown in there over 40 years, but it was big back then. So Bernadette, how did your encounter make you feel? Was it comparable to the other witnesses? I don't know. The thing in that happened in the hotel room was interesting. I don't look, that stuff doesn't bother me anymore. As many stuff I hear, the things, the encounters I've had in the past. I knew it wasn't a spirit or anything. I didn't pick up on anything like that when I was in there. But the sighting at the underpass, personally, I think we may have seen one. But I'm not gonna say for sure. This thing was big, and it wasn't a heron. It wasn't a crane. The wings, because if it was, I would have recognized the wings. I didn't see feathers on this thing. The wing, I just saw the one wing, and it was big, and it looked, it was just huge. So I don't know what we saw. So, but both Brad and I saw it. So, he commented, and I looked out real quick and just got to see the tail end of it. La Maison du Chat. I watched the Seth Breedlove documentary the other day, Lon. What do you think about it? They're talking about the, he did two, actually. He did the Lake Michigan Mothman with Tobias. And then he did something about the winged cryptids in northern Illinois area. But both of them mentioned the Chicago sightings. I don't know. I was, I don't know. I can't say I was really thrilled with it. I think it could have covered more. But then again, I'm not going to fault anybody for how they present this thing. I mean, I get it, you have certain limitations, I guess. I do know one thing. This production that we are involved with is going to be, they took all the stops out. There's a lot of money behind it, and it's covering a lot of stuff. So, when it's released, we'll definitely let you know about it. Brian McLeod. Crazy question. Have you spoken to any remote viewers regarding this? Yeah, I have. And I've tried to remote view this whole thing myself, and many times it just has not. It's been hard to pick up on. And a lot of times when we do remote views involving alien or otherworldly beings, we have issues as well. So is that what these things are? I don't know. But a lot of times we get to maybe the second or third level, and Shorter to Cook, she knows because she's a remote viewer too. And she's worked with me. Her and I have worked together for years. And maybe I'll try to talk her into doing one day for Chicago. We'll see. So, but no, we haven't gotten any decent information out of that. Andrew Boyle, question. Lon, are you aware of the Civil War camp in Chicago? Not Chicago. Nope, I don't know about that. There are a lot of POW camps in the middle, in Midwest. So, but I don't know particularly where that one in Chicago was located at. Let's see. Any other questions, folks? Okay. Well, I appreciate you all coming in tonight. Thanks to each and all of you for watching and chatting. If you made a donation, it's truly appreciated. Your support's what makes all this possible. So please like and subscribe and share. And if you have a sighting or encounter report that you'd like to be considered for the personal report show or post on Phantoms Monster, feel free to forward to my email, Lon Strickler at phantomsmonsters.com. So until we meet again, stay healthy and safe. Good night.